So hello everyone. In a previous video, we have covered basics of a caching, how to perform it, what are the different types of a caching, what will be the caching expirations, why it is important. Then we have understood enhancing I/O and the data access. Now, in this today's video, we will try to cover common uh, code paths fast. Okay. So in our application, there are a few things we are accessing frequently. And if those things are little bit lagging, then it will be huge performance degradation will happen. So in that case, what we need to do, we need to make those code path fast. And how we will do it? So you want all of your code will be fast. Frequently called code paths are most critical and optimized, and they should be optimized again. And these includes middleware components in the app's request processing pipelines. Especially middlewares run early in the pipeline, and these components have a large impact on a performance. So code that executed for every request or a multiple times per request. For example, custom logging, authorization handlers, and initialization of transient services. So, what are the recommendations for such kinds of a paths? So, do not use the custom middleware components with long running tasks. Again, use performance profiling tools such as Visual Studio diagnostic tools, PrefView to identify hot code paths and check the performances. And you can verify how we can utilize or how we can optimize this particular codes. Now, keeping common code fast is crucial for maintaining the good performance. And let's dive into some strategies and best practices for optimizing these frequently executed parts of your code. Efficient database access, whatever we have learned, I hope you all are doing this thing. Proper use of async await, efficient query and projection, implement pagination. Don't send whole data in a one page. Divide the data into the pagination. Again, caching, in-memory caching for frequently accessed data, output caching for relatively static content. Asynchronous programming, parallel execution of an independent operation. I guess the operation should not be dependent. Okay. Now, in that scenarios, you can go ahead with the asynchronous programming. It's not like all the time you are using async await, async await. Okay, you have to avoid. If something happens, should be executed in a sync way, then obviously you have to go ahead with it. Now, um, efficient database access, database operations are often biggest bottleneck in a web application, and optimize them for the speed. So you can go ahead with the async task, get users, and you can await context user to uh, read the users in a sync way, and you can fetch the data. Okay. Now, next one, just a minute. Yes. Minimize serialization and deserialization using system text JSON for better performance. So we need to minimize serialization and deserialization. Go ahead with the uh, text JSON. Use lightweight endpoints. Implement the minimal APIs for simple operations. Okay. Then efficient exception handling. Use value stack for synchronous operations and optimize the startup. Minimize work done during the application startup. So again, startup will take time. So that's why. Now use memory efficient data structures, choosing appropriate data structure for the specific use cases. Same, I think we are just repeating the things, same things we have to follow, profile and monitor. Each strategy is accompanied by code examples and demonstration which are available in a notes you can go ahead with. And remember, optimization is an ongoing process. Like you have to review your code for every 3 to 5 months, and it is important to regularly review and profile your application to ensure that the common code paths are remain fast, optimized. Performance check should be there in your application. Okay. Now let's go ahead. There are some uh, uh, blocks which I want to share before we go ahead with the minimized clients. So let me open it. Yeah, this is the one blog from the ASP.NET documentation, what not to do in ASP.NET and what to do instead. So this topic describes the several common mistakes people make when the ASP.NET web project will get created. It provides recommendation for what you should do to avoid these common mistakes. Okay. So there are standard compilers, control adapters, style properties on lots of things are there. So control adapters, recommendation is stop using control adapter for adaptive rendering and instead use CSS media queries and standard compilant HTML. Control adapters were introduced in a .NET 2.0 and render presentation code that was customized by the different devices and environments. Now, this adaptive rendering can be accompanied by the CSS and media queries. So you should stop using the control adapters, convert any existing adapter to the CSS and HTML. Media queries, and I hope that those are doing front end technology and working in they are aware about the media queries, React, Next, HTML, and all these things. So style properties on controls. Recommendations, stop setting style values in a control markup instead of set formatting values in a CSS style sheet. Page and control callbacks. Stop using page and control callback. Instead of use any of the following like Ajax, update panel, MVC actions method, web API, or Signal. In an earlier version, page and control callbacks methods enable you to update the part of a web page without refreshing the entire page. Now you can accomplish this particular task by using Ajax, jQuery, or MVC web API as a singular. So you can go ahead with this technology. Now, browser capacity detection. Stop using static browser capacity detection and instead of use dynamic feature detection. So in earlier ASP.NET, the support features for each browser were stored in XML file. Okay, we configure okay which browser and its version in XML file. Now, detecting feature support through the static lookup is not the best approach nowadays. Now, you can dynamically detect the browser supported features by using the feature detection frameworks. Or feature detection determines support by the attempting to use methods and properties what they are providing. So instead of writing in a configurational file, use the kind of a frameworks and they will provide you the property and methods. Now, security concerns, request validation. Always validate your input and encode output from the user. Request validation is the feature that inspects each request and stops the request if perceived threat is found. Do not spend on a request validation for securing your application against the cross-site scripting attack. Now, this is important nowadays. Instead of validating all input user and encode output, in some limited cases, you can use regular expressions and validate, as well as more complicated cases, you should validate using input by using .NET classes. Okay. So these are some examples you can visit. Cookieless form authentication and sessions. Recommendation require cookies. Passing authenticated information in the query string is not secure. Okay, therefore require cookies when your application includes authentication. So if your cookie stores the sensitive information, consider requiring SSL for the cookie. So these are the some authentication configurations are available. Okay, enable view state MAC, medium trust. Then there are app settings, URL path encode, reliability and performances. So all the do's and don'ts related to the particular domains are mentioned over here. Let me check again. Okay, so they have shared a video for a sync and await. Wait a minute, let me show you where exactly it gets situated. web development best practices. Okay, go through the ASP.NET best practices, and then there is a available web development best practices. So async await 5 minutes video is also available. Then Azure and Cloud App, all these things are available. You can go ahead. Next is web development best practices mentioned. So this one we visited, building the real world cloud app with the Azure. And the third one is the hands-on lab, maintainable Azure websites and managing change scale. So all the things are available in a documentation of ASP.NET. You can go through it. Now, one more link I want to share. Just a minute. There are few blogs having the same common information, but let's still visit them. So top 18 .NET Core best practices. Okay, inline methods. Okay, use asynchronous programming. Do's are there, don'ts are there. So links are already mentioned in a notes. You can go ahead with it. Optimize data access. Then always use cache. Response caching middleware components. Enable compression, building and minification. So minification we get to cover. We will cover in the next video. Use content delivery network. Load JavaScript from the bottom. Cache pages or cache part pages, fragment cache. Then exceptions, use exception only necessary when necessary. Okay, lots of exception should not be there. Exception should be rare. The catch and throw of the exception are slow in a comparison to the code flow patterns. Just a minute. Exceptions are not used to regulate the flow of a program. Take into the count the logic of the program to identify or resolve the exception from scenario. Throw or catch exception for usual and unexpected conditions. You can use app diagnostic tools like application insights to identify common exceptions in the app, how they perform. So setting at environment level. Okay. Then routing. Then use AutoMapper. What will be the standard way for the routing? We can provide detailed names. We should use noun instead of a verb. This is so basic standardization of a code. Okay, how to write the code. But no, rarely the people will follow this thing. Rarely they document the thing, what particular method is doing. If they have written something, what this thing is do, and some kind of a proper spacing, proper naming. Rarely we find out. Just review your own code. Use AutoMapper and avoid writing boilerplate codes. Yeah, extra boilerplate code not needed. AutoMapper is a convention-based object-to-object mapper, and that requires little configuration. Use Swagger. Okay, represents now depends your requirement. Logging, structure and proper logging process domain should be there. Do refactoring of for auto-generated code. In code, there are lots of auto-generated code. So set aside some time to examine the logic flow. And because we know our application better, we can improve a later. Like suggested, this thing is suggested that go ahead with the code review. Understand your code. Delete unused profile. This is so important. We improve the code and we maintain the existing previous whatever the wrong written code or what. So delete unused profiles, delete unused custom middlewares components from startup.cs. We forget to do these things sometimes. Okay, lots of extra code is there which is not useful. Still it's there in your application. Okay, if you want to maintain the versions. Okay, keep the code aside, and whatever the currently executable code is there, keep it aside and review that code, change that code. And then if you think that this particular code is stable, then go ahead with the release. Remove any default controllers you aren't using. So this is useful. So why to use advantages of ASP.NET Core, you already aware about. Fine. The next one is, let's go ahead. I hope that this is the same, having the same concept, same thing. Okay, fine, fine, not an issue. So here we completed with our some extra best practices, and we'll stop here and we'll come up with the next two concepts. So take care, bye bye.